Welcome to the Beauties and Beasties podcast with Alex and Sean.
Hello. How you doing?
Hi, young man. Okay, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Well, I say very well. I am frantic and a little frazzled. I decided that in the brief window between sitting down for the podcast and finishing. Oh, all right, you just walked away. I see my story is instantly captivating, engaging. Thank you very much.
I could hear the air conditioner whirling around and it was going to piss us off. So I was listening. Sorry, go on.
Okay. In the brief window between finishing work and the podcast, I thought I have no food in the house, need to pop out to the shops. So I popped to the shops and bless them, the person in the queue in front of me took a solid, it must have been 20 minutes, packing the bag one item at a time and then, writing the next chapter of War and Peace between each one. It was incredible. And of course, it only ever happens, doesn't it? It only ever happens when you know you've got to be somewhere to do something. But there we go. How about you? How's life treating you?
I put my first official complaint in to anyone since I've been a pest controller today.
You put a complaint in, or you got a complaint in?
I put a complaint into a housing association. So last night I got an inquiry through my website, which was billed, hi there, I'm getting some work done on me house by my housing provider. We found some bees. We think there's some bees in the loft. We need someone to come out and assess it and see how many bees are there, etc., with their details on. And you just get that feeling that something isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up speaking to them. They got really upset at me. When they said, what this is going to cost. And I was like, of course it's going to cost. You're asking us to come out and do work. And they're like, we're not asking you to come and do work. And I was like, well, you are. And they're like, no, we're not. And then eventually it transpires that they said, but we never put an inquiry in. So the housing association have tried to be very clever and have tried to put in it would appear that they have tried to put in an inquiry in the name of the tenant and from her in an attempt to get me out. So when I rang up,
on your website, the housing association's put in Mary Sue's details and her phone number and her email. Wow. To try and force a conversation between her and you.
No, to get me as if I was going to go out and do it. And then they would know, if that makes sense, because then they'd be able to go, oh, well, there is bees and blah, blah, blah. So now we can deal with it. So I rang them up and they said, I've got, what I can tell you is it says that you do free quotes on your website. I said, yeah, I do free quotes. I don't do free surveys. I'm not going up to do a day's worth of work at your property, especially as you have no intention of using me because you have your own pest control providers, don't they? And she said, yeah. I said, first of all, do you think it's correct that you have pretended to be one of your tenants? Second of all, you've done no checks on us. If I was unscrupulous, I could have went round, put your tenant under pressure and took money off them. And she was like, I said, and thirdly, the morals of asking someone to go and do some work and sort your problem out for you that you have no intention of using to make your life a little bit easier is downright distasteful and it's disgusting. Is it against GDPR? Absolutely. So I said, I want to speak to your manager. And she said, then she got a bit arsey with us. She said, the manager will speak to you when she's got time. You'll love this one though, Al. The manager will speak to you when she's got time. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll stop you there. You asked us to solve your problem. I'll solve your problem. I'm just going to put them in touch with a disrepair solicitor. Let's see how that goes. So I rang the disrepair solicitor up and I said, there's a lead here for you. Have a chat with them, blah, blah, blah. Turns out they've got black mold and all sorts in the house. So it's absolutely backfired on them.
Oh, you gotta. What's that? That's German word for it. I think it's Schadenfreude or Schadenfreude or something like that. It means the joy in the joy you experience from witnessing the misery of others. So
Yeah,
there we go.
that whatever that is, it's that.
It's that. Absolutely.
Uh,
It's one of the very few German words I partially know and get wrong every time. The other one being rhubarber marmalade. Two very different ends of the spectrum there. But there we go. So yes, oh, that's good. I mean, was it Miss Julie? Was it Julie that you put them in contact with,
Julie,
or?
no, so we've, believe it or not, we've got Julie introduced us to a team of solicitors in Middlesbrough, and they have the sort of national contract for what you call it, legal aid stuff, and they do a lot of, they look at the problems in a lot of a different way. They'll actually take them through criminal court as well as civil court, and they look at lots of different things. So depending on what job we get, depends on who it goes to, who it's like sort of more suitable for. But we certainly still pass stuff Julie's way. But yeah, this one was a Middlesbrough job on the doorstep. So, and they can get stuff. Like, how rude is that?
Absolutely. Yeah, again, I have a very romantic notion of our industry, and it upsets me when I see people who treat it with such disdain and that we're all knuckle dragging idiots at the end of the day, that we wouldn't be able to, that we don't have the gumption to be able to spot when somebody is trying to pull a fast one like that. It's just a little insulting at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because many of us are very skilled and talented people. Not Clive though, just
Yeah. Yeah, it's
getting
funny though,
Clive.
isn't it? You get that feeling and you know, don't you? As soon as you pick something up, you know there's something not quite right, don't you?
So,
You know,
to be fair, I refer to that as my spidey sense. Years of doing audits and root cause analysis and problem solving and stuff like that. You end up just kind of like walking past, don't you? And you just something tickles the back of your brain, and you suddenly think, "Hang on a second, that shouldn't be there," or that shouldn't have been said, or that doesn't quite add up, does it? If that came in last week, then actually what we're talking about here. But that kind of really nicely segues us into what we're going to be talking about tonight, doesn't it? Which is auditing
absolutely.
and standards and the rest of it, which is going to be a really interesting talk. So without further ado, should we get our main star on tonight, our special
Absolutely.
guest? Absolutely. Well, so everyone, we welcome to the stage. Katie, sorry. Oh, there we go. Are you on? You off? Oh,
I'm
what's happened
here.
here? There we go. Can you
I'm
hear us?
here. I can hear you. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
lovely stuff. Yes, there was just a little bit of a lag, a little bit of a pause, but we seem to be all on there. So, everyone, please welcome Kate Cross. She is from Red Tractor, specifically from their compliance division, I believe it is. So, although I believe any kind of auditing standard, it's mostly around compliance, isn't it? So, there we
It's
go.
one of those
But before we go,
all-encompassing words.
all-encompassing word, very much so. The industry of compliance. But before we go any further, can you please tell us just a little bit about yourself? How did you find yourself in the world of farming and compliance, and ultimately Red Tractor?
The world of farming, I probably didn't have much choice about it. I was born into a farming family in Lancashire, many generations, well, not many generations, many decades ago. So I was brought up on a dairy farm in Lancashire, in Blackburn. My father was a farm manager, where we milked 180 cows, had 600 sheep, and a suckler herd, and he had 4 daughters, and we had no choice but to be involved in agriculture. I then ended up at agricultural college. I ended up milking cows for various different people around the Lancashire, Yorkshire area, up until I got to the age of 30. And then it was a case of I was still milking cows at that point, and I had the choice: I either married the boss or I got out and did something else. So I went and did something else, got into the world of knowledge transfer. And then from there, I've ended up working with farmers, but then we'll end up in the world of certification and compliance at Red Tractor.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, that was a very sort of like whistle-stop tour there, but it sounds like you've been in the world of agriculture for your entire life there, mostly around dairy. Did you stick with dairy because you just like livestock? You never fancied sort of like
I'm not very good on a tractor.
Okay.
There's many a building in Lancashire that has a dent in the side because I'm not very good on a tractor. So the hence means I ended up with people, things with 4 legs, things with 2 legs. I'm not overly good with, flapping birds, etc.
Side, is there?
Yeah, the flapping bit gets me sometimes, but yeah, I can deal with them. I'm not like one of my colleagues that can't even see a pigeon. She gets a bit stressed, but yes.
Oh, wow, okay. Well, I can't see a pigeon. She's just got a terrible crick in her neck. She can't look up. Sorry, that was awful. I apologize. So if my screen carries on checking, I'm not having some kind of like seizure here. My dog is so desperate to try and get onto my lap right now that she carries on climbing up onto the desk. So there we go. Oh, well, that's really great. So how did you find yourself like specifically in Red Tractor though, considering that, that must have been like being part of a farming community to then go and join the ranks of the auditors for the farming community. Must have been seen by many as somewhat of a bold move.
You've met my 3 brother-in-laws then, who all have comments about the role that I undertake, the job that I do. I probably fell into the world of certification when I was at, I worked for one of the levy bodies, and I knew about farm assurance. I was involved in a few committees, if you will, that were engaged with the data that the farm assurance bodies brought together, but I probably didn't understand fully the world of certification. So there's the assessment visit, but there's the world of certification that sits behind it. And I actually ended up working with one of the certification bodies. I was with a breed society, a cattle breed society, got made redundant. There's no way I could watch any more tipping points, so I was applying for any job that was going. And I ended up working at a certification body. They very kindly took me on, and then it's gone from there, really. I just had I like people doing things right.
Yeah, could I ask a favour? Could you explain the difference to people about Red Tractor, Farm Assured, and how these things sort of mold together?
Yes, I can, by all means. So Red Tractor, Assured Food Standards, that's the trading body that we have. Sorry, I've got some noisy dogs now. Assured Food Standards own Red Tractor Farm Standards. So we are a standards owner, Red Tractor, but our standards are assessed by certification bodies. So there's various different certification bodies out there in the industry, but Red Tractor works with 4 in particular that are licensed to use our standards. So they will, the ones that will go down the farm drives and actually do the assessments. So the assessors work directly for the certification bodies. And what that means is they will go assess, look for compliance on the farm in line with the standards. They will gather objective evidence in a report that then is sent back to the certification body for review and certification to say that that farm is compliant with the requirements of standards and can be issued a certificate of certification. All our certification bodies work under UCAS accreditation, UK Accreditation Service, accreditation for certification of a product. Hence the reason they have rules that they have to work to. And it's those rules, in essence, they're looking for repeatability of how certification works, so everybody is treated the same. And I know some of the questions that will probably come up later will be about consistency of assessment. How can one person ask for one thing, one person ask for another? So my role within the compliance is looking to ensure that we can get that consistency of assessment. You always have issues, if you will, because you're dealing with humans. But what you should have is that they're all working with the same standards, the Red Tractor standards, they're all assessing against those same standards and therefore looking for the same things to show compliance with those standards. Does that help?
So is farmers sure are doing the checks for the red tractor? Is that basically
the certification bodies are doing the assessment and the certification on behalf of Red Tractor, the Red Tractor standards. There are other standards out there, other farm assurance schemes. There's what's called bolt-ons that will sit alongside Red Tractor that might be supermarket specific ones, or there's other schemes. There's the organic scheme, which is a legal requirement, but there's also other schemes that like LEAF, RSPCA, etc., which will have their own standards that will also be assessed.
So because pest management, we are not a particularly big industry in the UK. I mean, we all know each other. It's kind of one of those. I went to an Olympic stadium actually to go and watch the Foo Fighters a little while back, and I was told by the person I was with there that the away seating over there was about 10,000 people. And I thought to myself that you could fit most of the pest management community in the UK in the away seating of the Olympic arena, or the Olympic stadium in London. We are not that big, we probably, we talk about 7 degrees of separation. It's probably only 3 degrees of separation in the pest management community to actually get to know just about everyone going. We are a small community, and I think we forget sometimes just how small we are in comparison to, say, the agricultural community. So with that, I mean, roughly, do you know, I mean, just asking you to pluck a number out of the air here, but how many farms do you guys have to deal with annually for Red Tractor?
So we have 46,000 members of Red Tractor across the different schemes. So we cover Red Tractor cover dairy, beef and lamb in England, pigs, poultry. We don't cover eggs, but we do cover poultry, fresh produce, and combinable crops, so cereals and sugar beet. So across those, we have 46,000, and we have 350-ish independent assessors that will work for the certification bodies, and they're the ones that will go down those farm drives to do the assessments.
But is that multiple farms or singular, if that makes sense? So when you say we've got 46,000
members, yes.
Yeah, members, that's what I mean. So that member could have 2-3 farms, couldn't he?
They could have 2, or schemes as well. So you could be a member of our crop scheme and a member of our beef and lamb scheme. So one farm could have 2 memberships because they're different schemes, if you will. But yes. So,
but still, I mean, so as you say, you're the not the only scheme out there. There are others, but also members doesn't necessarily equate buildings. There is, one member, as Sean says, might have several different farms going, several different enterprises going at the same time.
Yes.
So once again, just in terms of your smallest number is 4.5, 5 times larger than our biggest estimate. So we are really.
Sorry, do you know how many farms there is in the UK?
Oh, I don't know how many there are in the UK. We do know that we probably cover 95% plus of dairy farms, because the next level up, the people that are buying the milk require it of being Red Tractor. We're probably in the 70s for beef production in terms of finished animals. But then you'll have, sheep production, because the stratified schemes or setups of farms within the UK in sheep production, will probably 50-60% of sheep farms will be within Red Tractor, because there are markets out there that don't require Red Tractor. So it's all the marketplace. Red Tractor gives you access to a greater number of marketplaces, dedicated supply chains, etc., that are going into supermarkets. But there are markets available in some sectors that don't require Red Tractor farm assurance.
So as you say, that is a lot of farms. That's a lot of area. That's not a huge number of people to try and assess all of those either. So that's got to be run. That's a lot of people. We're going to get some questions in just a minute. I'm surprised they've not started coming through already. But I'll ask. Unless Sean, have you got any to the top of your head? Or
I'm just looking. It says it's like 100 and about 130 farms per member of staff on
Per
average.
assessor.
Yeah, per
Yeah.
assessor. Yeah, so that's what 130. So they're assessing a farm every sort of 2 to 3 days. Is that over the course of the year? I would say, is it?
So our different schemes work on different cycles. So beef, lamb, and dairy are an 18-month cycle that they would be assessed on, whereas our fresh produce, crops, pigs and poultry, because of the life cycle of things, are on a 12-month scheme. So those assessors will be split out across those different schemes as well. So yeah, but it will be, yeah. Some of them we're doing two farms a day, assessing. Some, depending on the scheme as well, might only do one a day if they're doing other people's schemes alongside Red Tractor.
Okay.
But I think one thing we need to remember is you're not assessing pest control, you're assessing the farm, and pest control is a percentage of it, isn't it?
Pest control is one of our sections of all our standards. Will have vermin control, so they're called the VC standards within our current schemes. But yeah, it's vermin control, and then we're looking at the management of it. Remember the Red Tractor logo, and hopefully you've all seen the adverts. Some of you might have been in the supermarkets recently and seen the adverts as you're walking into the supermarkets or on the trolley ends. Safe, traceable, and farmed with care. So that's what that's our tagline, that people can say if they see the logo that they know that, and that's across all elements, that it's a food that we're producing and that it has been farmed with care. So that's environmental, animal welfare, the people that are actually doing the roles as well. It's all covered within the Red Tractor standards. It is worth saying at this point that our standards aren't hidden behind any paywall or anything like that. They're all readily available on the Red Tractor website. We have a consumer website which talks top line about our standards and the messaging of Red Tractor, but there's also our assessment website, which you as professionals that are providing a service to our members will probably be interested in, and that details all the standards for the different schemes there. Like I said, readily available to people.
So we've got some questions coming in, and while we wait for those to rack up, I do have to say, I, in a previous life, was a certified field biologist. I was an auditor. I was an assessor. I was, a root cause analysis. All of these various different roles, and by far and away, having access to standards didn't make life scary. It was actually like the key to the golden goose, to mix my metaphors there. Having access to standards, and I'm talking now to everyone listening. If you can get hold of the standards of the site that you are running on, it is being given the answer sheet to the exam that you're about to sit. It will tell you in detail exactly what you need to do in order to pass that exam. There's no hidden thing. There's not going to be like, aha, and suddenly question 13B that you weren't expecting. But it's all there, and it's the most phenomenal tool. And exactly as Kate says, there's some audit standards which are hidden behind either a paywall, or they are hidden behind layers of safeguard and bureaucracy, and it's very difficult to get hold of them. So actually having an audit standard which is so transparent and so easy to access is a real boon. And I strongly recommend anyone who is doing any kind of rural hygiene, rural pest control, go and download them and have a look, because it will make, even if you are not currently being audited to that standard, being able to show that you are working to that standard is great, because it means that if ever the farm decides to move over to that particular standard, you've already got all of your I's dotted and T's crossed. So that is fantastic. But it does bring up a couple of questions I do have. And the first one will be, the first of two is, number one, the standards, this is a statement before a question. The standards are very heavily biased towards your site pack, aren't they? People think that people are coming in to be audited on the pest control as it is being done. But the reality is, if you actually have a look at, especially the combinable crops, almost half of that revolves around the information contained within your site pack and the information contained within your treatment reports and within your site surveys. So the question one of two is, how best can pest managers convey that information to you, Red Tractor, and your associated auditors at that point? How is the best way of doing that? Pen and paper, digital? How do we go about that?
We accept any format, to be honest. It's about it being accessible and it detailing the information that's required. I think it's key to say here, the assessor's role is to look for compliance, not to go out picking holes or looking for non-conformances. It's how is that member able to show compliance with the requirements and standards. So by maintaining site survey records to say that they've identified any risks around the site where there may be vermin activity or would encourage vermin activity. They've undertaken an environmental risk assessment before the use of bait. When we're doing a walk around the farm, looking for the bait points, making sure that they're not open. There isn't bait just thrown about. It's probably the wrong word, but I have seen it like that, lying about in open spaces in buildings. It's they're looking for compliance, but we'll note when non-conformances are seen. Your question about whether pen and paper, digital, like I said, any format will do. We do have templates on the Red Tractor website. They are not a must that they must be used, but that does detail all the information we'd be looking for to be recorded. We do also have something some of you may have come across called the Red Tractor portal, and I'm hoping that some of your clients may have mentioned it. But if you are doing paper records or sending your clients a PDF after a visit, they can upload that onto the portal, which is then accessible to their assessor to show that the appropriate records are being kept, and that will give the assessor the information they need to develop an audit trail when they're on farm to say, right, well, I know someone's been in, replenished, such and such a boxes on such date. I've got a site map here. When I'm walking around, I know where these 3 bait boxes are going to be. I'll just see if they're in position when I'm there and check that bait map marries up with what I'm seeing. So verifying points as you go along. Yeah.
I mean, that's all absolutely excellent. And the second part of this question, which very much leads into that, which is, you kind of mentioned at the beginning, which is that assessor there to say, this place is swimming with rats, you're not doing your job? Or are they there to say, look, you've, according to your paper, according to what you've done everything that you could have done, and yet this act of God has occurred, and this is it? Because, and I say this because I've been in and I have had to audit auditors before, and it's very clear that when you go in, you will see some pest management companies or some pest managers so terrified of looking to have done badly in their roles of pest management will say, yeah, absolutely, no problem. And of course, there is a big problem rumbling on in the background. So the second part of the question there is you guys as an assessor, what would you rather see? Would you rather see just a treatment log full of, there is a problem, but I'm doing something about it, or the alternative?
So the standard across all our schemes is there must be effective control of vermin. Now, if you got noted that you've got a problem and you're doing something about it, you are trying to manage that problem. That would be noted in the objective evidence the assessor, who is the person that's on site at the time, is gathering and putting for the reviewers, the certifiers to see. So that is their role to look at what's going on, marry up what they see on site with what the records are they're seeing. I'm guessing you're asking me, would I rather see go to a farm where, yes, there is a vermin problem, but they're dealing with it, or somewhere that's got lots and lots of records, but not actually doing...
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those catch-22 situations, really, where we find a lot that people are so terrified of admitting that there is a problem on their site or on their farm that they will maybe not fill in that particular box. What I'm basically trying to look for here is it's not an automatic fail to have rats on site, so long as you're being shown to do something about it.
Yeah. Show me a farm that hasn't had a vermin problem at some point. I live in the real world. maize harvest, you're going to encourage the rats. They're going to come. If you grow maize, you're going to end up with that potential problem. So, you said that if you've got vermin or activity on site, it's a fail. It isn't. There is no pass fail within Red Tractor. We have standards that are called key standards, and VC1 that I've just mentioned there about effective control of vermin is called a key standard, which you can have a major and minor non-conformance against. If you had a raging vermin problem and you hadn't done anything about it, that would be a major non-conformance. That would result in the suspension of your Red Tractor certificate. If you had a rat infestation and you had done something about it, but you hadn't done anything, it wasn't effective, you couldn't demonstrate that was being effective or reducing the problem, it would be a minor non-conformance. You'd have to provide evidence within the 28 days about what you've done to further manage the problem. If there'd been a problem and you said, well, here's all my records, and we've gone from X number when we're down to we're replenishing every 3 days, and we're finding X number of carcasses, that wouldn't be, because you're showing that you are trying to effectively manage the farm for vermin control. So it's all different levels.
That's super interesting because, of course, you're probably the third person that we've had on who said the importance of record keeping is paramount, and having a concise treatment report where all the information is on there. Third person from different walk of the industry, different area, and it just goes to hammer home that point, isn't it? That what was your expression you used last week, Sean, about paperwork? That you
paperwork. The money is in the paperwork, not in the hard work.
So there we go.
They've got to marry up. They've got to marry up. I've been out before now when I've been given this folder, and look, I've got this folder. And you go, that's great. You've got all the sheets of paper we need, but it doesn't. None of it actually related to sorting the problem out that was out there. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I have got some other questions, but it looks as though Hugh has actually been taking. So it looks as though he's been snaffling up all the questions from our various social medias and just putting them on here. So, I mean, unless Sean, do you have any others, or should we launch into some of the ones that?
There's obviously a big. We do a few farms, and we've kicked about on farms a lot. And the first thing that is obvious to me is that is a general rule, a standard of vermin control that we see from farmers is not what we would expect from professionals. But then it seems like the professionals are held to a far higher standard than the farmers are in terms of training. So we have to have more training. We have to have higher levels of training. We have to be going more regular than farmers do, and they appear to be doing a very, 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 very small amount of training, less regular. So I wonder how are the standards getting balanced where that's seen as appropriate.
Okay, and we've got a question in from Richard that's along very similar lines about, I'm sure someone's told him that members can buy professional rodenticides without undertaking any training. And at the moment, under CREW, there is something called earned recognition, and that is that those people that are members of Red Tractor are currently able to buy rodenticides by being able to demonstrate that they are a member of Red Tractor. And this is every member is being assessed the same standards for vermin control, regardless of whether there's a professional company coming in to do their vermin control or whether they're doing it themselves. They'll all be assessed to exactly the same standards, wording, etc. The training is probably the big difference. The recording requirements are exactly the same that would be asked for in that respect. You will have to undertake training to be a member and to sell your services, if you will. Currently, Red Tractor members are able to buy that rodenticide without the training that you guys would have to go through, or yeah.
But I say that is all going to change as of January 25, isn't it? It was one of these things that stewardship came in 2015, 2016. It started and it was implemented, and it only really fully started to get its feet underneath it by 2017. And it was assumed at the time that there was too many farmers in the UK to put them through this training in such short order, especially considering and my previous job, my previous role, my labs were up on a farm. I was very good friends with the farm manager down there and the farm hands and the farmer, and you'd be amazed, guys, as to how much stuff a farmer needs to be doing that is not just rodent control. Keeping up with all of these other tickets, all of these other bits of legislation, and sometimes pest management is just, quite honestly, so far down the list it is a little bit unreal. But with that, it's incredible like that. So absolutely. Sean,
how do you find the farmers take to vermin control, or what is their sort of attitude towards it? Because we only see we see the ones who want us rather than the ones who don't. So how is it deemed from like the farming community?
I think it's one of those interesting things, isn't it? Some people will say, I have livestock, I have feed, I'm growing grain, therefore I will always have a vermin problem because it'll just happen. And it's what they accept as the norm. And that's where, just in Alex's question before about, if someone's doing something about a vermin issue, they would have a non-conformance raised if there was a vermin issue and they were doing absolutely nothing about it. Because even though they can sit there and say to the assessor, well, that's the normal, I'm always going to have rats because I've got animal feed, etc. But if they've got spilt feed lying about, they've got grain stores open access to to vermin, etc., that will be a non-conformance with the requirements, the standards. And there'll be other people, that it's first and foremost their mind. They don't want that disease risk from vermin running about. They don't want the risk, of rodenticide when having to use rodenticide when they don't have to. So they'll take vermin control very, very seriously. So the same as any general population, they'll all have different takes on it, on the importance of it to their business. But one thing I would say at this point is there isn't anything within the Red Tractor standards that isn't good business practice. There's nothing's been put in there. And I know there was a question earlier on about how do we write the standards, but there isn't anything across all the standards, and I'm not just talking about the vermin control here, that isn't good business practice. So should benefit the business, the long-term sustainability of that business. But what I will say, and one of the reasons I'm joining this evening, it was mentioned earlier, my colleague Annie had gone up to a farmer day recently. I'm doing another talk down in beginning of September with the Pest Techs Association. We're listening. We know that you are the professionals. You know this sector inside out. You know what works, what doesn't work, what challenges there are when you're interacting with people. So we are listening, when we look to review standards, we are looking to the professionals in that sector to help us make sure we get it right.
So how do you set and how do you go about setting your standards for the vermin control? What's the process of them coming around?
So our standards across the board, we have Red Tractor, again, all readily available on the website. We have something called Red Tractor Board, which are responsible for that particular sector. And then we have a technical advisory committee. The technical advisory committee were made up of different people from the industry to help us do that horizon scanning, if you will. What issues are there coming up? What do we need to be aware of? We have technical managers. I've already mentioned Annie in the crop sector. We have a team of 7 technical managers, if I include the lady that does meat processing, technical managers that have that technical expertise in their sectors as well. And they'll bring all those people and that information together to help us write those standards and look at what the outcome is that we want. And that's what the standard is there for, is to give us an outcome. So the outcome is reduce vermin activity, safe food on farm, lack of risk, lack of potential of risk to non-target species from any vermin control that takes place on site. So we use those industry people to help us write the standards, and when we come to do the next iteration, it is highly likely. Someone's already mentioned what's likely to happen in January with regards to access to professional rodenticides. We'll be looking to people to help us just make sure that our wording, our audit points, if you will, are correct and workable within the confines of what happens with the businesses.
And I think that's a really good thing. So with that, how would you recommend that pest managers in the pest management communities, especially those who work in rural areas, especially those who are, working with farmers and working to your standards, they all have questions, and I'm sure there isn't a single pest manager out there that it doesn't do work on a farm that hasn't at some point raised an eyebrow about something that they've been asked to do or not do. What would be the best way for them to get their thoughts and feedback to you in a coherent, non-shouty, but what is the best way of getting that information to you guys? Is it through a proxy? Is it through a trade association? Is it through a website? How do we do that?
Well, you could go through the trade association. Said we have good links with the MPTA. We have our website. We have something called an inquiries inbox. Anything that comes into there is dealt with and sent to the appropriate technical managers to review and feed into. Obviously, you've got links. You've got links with the technical manager, Annie, that we've discussed, myself. We're always feeding in things that we've heard. Only today there was a discussion. I'm sure someone will bring up as a question as we go through about vermin control on poultry units. And one of the technical manager was saying, "Oh, I've had this discussion." I said, "Okay." I said, "That's interesting because that's probably a little bit at odds with what the conversations I've been having with people about vermin control at poultry units, because they're allowed to do continuous baiting because of the risk to the birds, etc. And how different people have read the requirements. And so that's why it's really important that we as Red Tractor put out what the standards, what the need of the standard is. So in essence, what the outcome of that standard is, and the reason we've got that standard, or the reason we've got that wording behind it, so that everybody knows what we're actually asking for and why it's in there. So it goes back to Sean's comment about, the money's in the paperwork. Well, why are we asking for the paperwork? Because that is our defense at times, but that is, I could go out on site and say to someone, are you baiting? And they say, yeah, I'm baiting. And when was your last replenishment day? Or have you had a period where you've taken bait up? And they'll go, yeah. The paperwork helps me verify that information, helps me understand that person is doing what is the requirements of the standards. So that's, yeah. But feedback, our website it has the email addresses, the inquiries at Red Tractor, and the different parties who work there, contacts that you can always feed through us there as well.
So I know it's probably a good time to talk about was speaking about different standards and etc. and how you deal with this. If I know there's been a couple of people who spoke to me this week specifically about exactly that. When you get an auditor who seems to have their what appears to be their own standards, to start asking for things where you think I've never been asked for that before, never been asked for it again, and they'll almost create paperwork or hard work for you, or they'll give you a non-compliance off the back of something that they would like to see rather than maybe aren't in the standards. How is a professional, because that damages your reputation with your customer. If you're up to date with your standards and they come in and go, no, you did. Someone was saying earlier on this week the auditor wanted to see some sort of risk assessment for what would happen if the boxes were subject to going underwater and the water the rodenticide got into the river. And I was like, you actually anywhere near the water? He's like, no, it was just something they wanted to see. So how does the professional pest controller deal with that situation?
That scenario sounds very worrying to me. Our assessors are all assessing against their standard, and they're only assessing against what's written on the website, in the standards booklet, etc. So they should only be assessing against the requirements of those standards. I will admit you will have people out there that will have their own hobby horses, if you will, and will go down. My role is to try and, for want of better words, knock those hobby horses out of them, to remind them that they are assessing to the requirements of the standards and they are looking for compliance with the requirements and standards. It's not making up what they think they need to give them that evidence that someone is complying with the requirements and standards. They're saying, well, what's the farmer got to show me that there is effective control of vermin, that toxic bait is being used responsibly? It goes back to we're assessing against the standards. They shouldn't be asking for anything above that and beyond that side of things.
To be fair, I just want to say, to put a better balance in, I do feel for the auditors, because I'm sure that the hobby horses, you say, the reason why they've got them is because they've seen something go wrong at some point. They haven't just come up with them in the red. Something's went wrong where a load of baits ended up in a stream or whatever it is.
Or they've heard something that's recently something's happened and they've gone, oh, that could have happened because of this. And there's other things that have happened in the food industry in recent times. People thinking, oh, well, there, but for the grace of God go I. If this had gone wrong or that had gone wrong, that we could end up with the same outcome. And we have elsewhere in the standards, we have something called contingency plans. So that there would be scenarios in a contingency plan. What happened with flooding? What would happen? Fire, etc. And we have within the PPPs, the plant protection products standards, regarding what happens if a chemical drum cracks, and therefore you've got a spill kit, things like that. So there's other things that they may be taken from that element and implemented them elsewhere. So and if you do look at the standards, and it would encourage you all, if you want something to do in an evening on a Friday night, there's the vermin control standards, but there's also what we call REC standards, because bait, I think in that case the assessor's thinking of it as a potential pollutant, and they've maybe put those two together and said, well, actually this might occur in that scenario.
How, as a pest controller, when we get as Hugh says, I've had more than one weird request, and I'm sure every pest controller will have had weird requests. How do we deal with that? Because sometimes I just go, just do it, it's easier, just do it, it's done. But then there's other times where you think, I might be creating a rod for my own back here. So as a professional pest controller, we get that weird request through. How do we deal with it?
And then from the farmer or the client, sometimes it's just say, right, what exactly have you been asked for? And I think that's where, like I said earlier, having sight of the standards beforehand, so you know what red tractor standards might look like, will always help. Say, well, actually, where do you think that interpretations come from to do that request? Just ask them exactly what they've been asked for. But also, when a member has an assessment, the assessor will leave them. They'll talk through the non-conformances that raise. They will leave them a detail, but they'll also be told that if they don't agree with any of the non-conformances, they can ask, challenge it, if you will, ask the certification body what they actually mean and what they need to do to show compliance, what actually mean. So that the member, the farmer, your client, can always go back to their certification body for clarity about what's actually needed. But like you said, the weird requests, if you do them, you are potentially perpetuating that someone then thinks that's the issue. And then you get another assessor that will go out and assess against the standards, and the member will go, but they never asked me about this time, and it was, I nearly died in a ditch over that last time round. So against the standards is key to that side of things. But the assessor and the member should have that. As you go around and do the assessment, you do the paperwork review, etc., there should be that rapport where the member at the time should be able to ask questions of the assessor,
right,
and go back to them. But or come to ourselves.
And you say it's not a then and there on the spot stamp. You're done. There's a 28-day grace period, isn't there?
It's 28 days to provide corrective evidence. Yes, and if
So let's say the assessor came in and said, "Oh, your site map's not up to date," and you're like, "Well, of course it isn't. For some reason the members given the site map from 2021. I gave them the new one 3 weeks ago. It's obviously just not got filed away in the system. Corrective action, then they're on the spot, job done, and things like that." Now, there's a question come up here, and I think this is a really interesting. There's actually some really good questions come up here, and we're going to have to start cherry picking them because we could very easily be here all night. But this is one that's always confused me a little bit. Why is there no insect control considered as part? Yeah, you say instantly, sort of like grinning. Is this one that you were anticipating? Is this on your bingo card of questions, or?
A little bit, because insect control, it is within our fresh produce side of standards. We think about insect control. We have pest traps within our crop standards. We talk about fly papers in our dairy standards, but I think everybody talks about vermin, pests. Everybody goes to the things with 4 legs and fur and a tail, don't they, in our world? So they are within the standards. They're probably not not forefront of people's minds. So if I just this is the vermin control standards in the turkey standards, because it just happened to be the one I picked up. And the aim of those standards is the effective and responsible control of birds, rodents, and other animals to prevent contamination and risk to food safety and animal health. Obviously, because it's the turkey one is why it says animal health. But that's the baseline of what the standards are trying to cover. So in essence, anything that's going to cause a risk to food safety would be covered. It's probably, like you said, not quite as explicit as things with 4 legs and a tail are within our standards.
Right. So with that, you're saying that when you're having a look through the standards, even though it doesn't necessarily, because this might be a very interesting conversation that people are going to suddenly have with their clients. So you're sitting there saying that it doesn't specifically mention insects. It doesn't mention by name grain weevils or cryptolestes or lesser houseflies or anything like that. But if there is a case to say that those animals are prejudicial to health of the livestock that you're looking after, or prejudicial to the consumability, let's say, or the security of the food that they are storing, then that absolutely falls under that remit of things that should be considered.
Yes. So I just on our crop standards under our storage of combinable crops, ST5 insect traps must be used in stored crops. So the farmer will probably put insect traps in, but insect traps are monitored in line with the timeline outlined by your storage strategy. Records are kept of dates of checks, insect activity, and follow-up actions taken. Therefore, if you're going out, someone's had a problem and you're going out, it would be expected that they would keep a record of that follow-up action that you've taken in that respect. So it is covered at other bits within the standards rather than just directly in the vermin control side of things. There is in the dairy standards about fly covers at windows and flies not being in the dairy because of the food hygiene risk as well. So.
Okay, so guys, one more reason to read your standards fully. It's your justification at the end of the day. It's the justification for the work you wish to undertake. I want to do X, Y, and Z. Why? And we all know farmers, we love them down to the ground, and you being the daughter of a farmer and, but farmers are tighter than a duck's ass in water, I have to say. Am I wrong? They're lovely people, but trying to get them to do anything can be very, very difficult. So yes, interesting that although not specific, or implicit in those instances, that's definitely in there. This is one that.
Sorry, I was just blasting through my head there. Do you see a noticeable difference in the quality of the standards if the farmers have had it done by professional pest controllers as opposed to in-house?
We wouldn't see that at Red Tractor because we don't gather the information whether someone's compliant currently, whether they are compliant because they are using a third party to their pest control or whether they're doing it in-house. It'd be the certification bodies under the objective evidence that's written by the assessor that might be gathered what the records are that they've seen and you know who undertakes the vermin control, etc. So again, we're assessing the standards. So if the standards are being met, we're not at this stage not particularly looking at who does it. Now, I'm saying all this with a bit of a caveat because, as many of you know, there is a review going on of farm assurance across the board and post Brexit, how it works, how it delivers for industry. And one of the thought processes we are going through is there information or are there opportunities to look at relationships that some of our farms have with other parties to help us risk rate those farms. So if, you know, thinking about a poultry broiler unit, if they are using third-party professional vermin control personnel, are we saying actually they, on the risk rating for that particular element, are a lower risk than someone that is doing it themselves or someone that does no vermin control? So, you know, is it a marker, if you will, for whole farm side compliance, not just the vermin control side of it? So at the moment, we can't tell you that, we don't look at that, but it is something we're looking at, saying, well, actually, as the world moves on, you know, is there information we can gather from someone's relationship with a third party that will give us more confidence in how that farm or that site is managed? So watch this space, Sean, is probably what I'm saying.
Ooh, that is interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And that's why it was interesting when you said earlier about, do we expect pieces of paper or digital tools, etc. So actually, you know, the relationships that people are having and the accessibility of information that they have and what they're using gives you more information about how that person interacts in the round with the industry going on. I know there was a mention up earlier about, we've talked about farmer training. Alex mentioned about, you know, how many tickets farmers used to need to have, etc. But, you know, someone's engagement with the industry, with trading, can tell you a lot about how they manage their business. Because remember, these people, same as yourselves, are business people. Yes, they're farmers, but there are business people. So how they are managing their business, how they see continual professional development as part of their business, their staff's continual professional development as part of their business, is probably a key indicator going forward that we might look at.
That's one of them sayings, isn't it? How we do anything is how we do everything, isn't it? You know, like, you know, it's true.
It's full of sayings, is Sean, isn't it? It's very good.
Oh, yeah, no, that's it. I'm out of them. That's it. I'm done. Paperwork and hard work. I came up with that one myself, but the rest are just ones.
There's probably a third one in there somewhere. This is a good one. So you've mentioned before that you have, of course, you are aware of crew. How do you not? However, there was a survey done last year, and it was an informal CAP survey where professional users of rodenticide were asked a series of questions. And when I say professional users, specifically three main groups here, which is the professional pest manager, which is us, farmers and gamekeepers. And overwhelmingly, most of the farmers who were asked, do you know who crew is? Not a huge number of them did. And I think I can find that. I think that was something that came out of crew, but out of the three categories, they were the ones who were least, I think I'm right in saying that, least aware of who crew was. And which is a worry, because we live by the tenets of crew, which is to have the maximum impact for the minimum cost. And especially with huge changes to the label, the loss of open area use, the removal of certain products from our toolkit, how do we help this process?
Yeah, it's interesting. Hugh's question there is, why are more farmers not aware of crew? I'm not shifting blame or anything. We as a standards body do talk about crew. Our website sends them to crew guidance, etc. There's probably a responsibility of the whole of the agricultural industry, the knowledge transfer activity that goes on within the agricultural industry, to possibly put it a little bit more up in front of people's minds, as well, and what Crew is and what it's trying to do, what's been agreed, to allow them to do their own vermin control to date, etc. How do we make people understand it more? Again, I hate to say an old saying, but you probably need to tell someone at least 7 times and in quite quick succession for them to understand it. And we probably just haven't done enough as an industry. Again, not Red Tractor's role to do the knowledge transfer, but as an industry, to tell people about the importance of this. The industry probably just has fallen down there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've
got to sort of like retract on that a little bit, because I've just brought the report up, and actually the question that came up was not have you heard of Crew, it was have you heard of the risk hierarchy, and with that it was almost 80% of farmers in 2023 had heard of Crew, but only 48% of total farmers have heard of the risk hierarchy. So that's a retraction straight away there before I have some.
Well, the risk hierarchy is mentioned in the environmental risk assessment that they would do if they were baiting themselves. So I'm hoping the 52% that had heard it, or the 48% that had heard it, are the ones that are doing their own vermin control, and the ones that are using you guys are allowing you guys to do it, and therefore the percentage that don't know about it, because I have a third party professional to do that side of things. So yeah,
absolutely.
Just saying, I'm looking at your standards here of one of them, and it is good to have a read of them, because it says they're talking about being assessed, and it says how you will be measured. No build-up of vegetation close to farm structures that could harbour vermin. I think like every farm I go on has vegetation around part of the building which harbours vermin. That's what makes life interesting, isn't it, when you're doing farm pest control? But it's quite interesting, isn't it, that we could bring these up as things to be done. And if you know what you're looking at, BVC.1.A, and you can quote that and say, accordance with this and a photograph, this needs cleared. Like, all of a sudden you can start to have a little bit more sway with them, can't you? And you bring it up, and the auditor sees it and says, oh no, he's right, that needs doing. Like, you need to be on this, don't you? Prior to treatment, the baits with non-chemical control method is considered first, followed by the least toxic alternatives. The problem is, though, that just doesn't happen, does it? Because farmers walk into the grain mill and they go, what you got? And they go, we've got this stuff, kills them single feed, and they're like, give me 20 kilos of that.
And then, unfortunately, they sort the problem out, and they're still using it 5 years later.
Give me 20 kilos of that and 2 black boxes. Like, how often are you filling them up, mucker? Environmental risk assessments. Tell us truthfully, are farmers actually filling in environmental risk assessments and stuff like that? Because the ones I know would definitely not be filling them in.
I think, truthfully, it's probably one of our most common non-conformances. Are you baiting? Yes. Have you got an environmental risk assessment? No. Then the assessors can't advise, but they will then say, well, here's one, and here's an example of one that's copied, that's filled in, and that's when the questions start. And you say, well, how do I dispose of my carcasses? Well, have you read the product label and what the product label's telling you? No. Well, that'll tell you how you should dispense of carcasses, spent bait, etc. So it is. It is a little bit of an education lesson when the assessor raises those non-conformances with people. Like I said, it is one of our probably most common non-conformances. Isn't a lot of vermin activity on farm. It's the fact that they are doing the baiting and they haven't got that environmental risk assessment.
So where do you signpost people to go to find this information? Of course, there's the product label, number one, but of course, we have the nuances of the risk hierarchy, of course, how to do environmental risk assessment, what is permanent baiting, stuff like that. So where would you recommend that people are signposted to go to find this information from a Red Tractor's point of view?
So we do have within our standards, we're showing us currently where to find help. So we've got the crew link there. We do link to National Poultry Council for the poultry side of things. AHDB, different producer groups would maybe have details. HSE sometimes for the cost side of things if someone's got more than 5 employees. So we do have those links on there for people. It has been known, like I said, the assessors can't advise. We have been known where we said, actually, talk to your local ag college about training for people on your own site, just so they've got the basics of it. Because I think it is key to say here, and I think I said this when we did the conference in Milton Keynes last year, you can be responsible for what you're responsible for as professionals. You go out, you're doing your job, you're doing your boxes. You can't be responsible for them thinking, oh, I saw a rat over there the other day, I'm just going to chuck some bait down that hole there, because they think they're helping out because they've spotted it and they do it. So that you can't be responsible for that. And 9 out of 10, when I've had these conversations with some of your colleagues, etc., it has been, well, what we got pulled up for wasn't actually our bit. It was the bit that they thought, they'd sort it out because they knew an assessment in 2 weeks' time. This interact, we'll sort that out rather than waiting for me to come back and do my next visit and sort it out properly. So yeah, so that was interesting when Sean said, do you get more non-conformances on farms that are using professionals or doing it themselves? What we have to consider is there's those that do a mix of it some days, and they make it a little bit harder for things.
Oh, so we've got a little while left now, and you have covered so much ground for us today. I couldn't be just more grateful for you just at all. So there is a couple of questions coming in. Are there any that you would like to specifically focus on and answer in the little bit of time that we've got left? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but we have so many questions now that have come in, and Hugh's done a very good job of just snaffling these up from around the internet here.
So I know there's been a few questions regarding the standard that came in regarding bait use within a grain store where grain is in place. Now
I think that'd be a very useful one then.
Yeah. I was going to say I'm not qualified to. I will give you the background about how it came about. It goes back to how we set our standards. There was a number of discussions about whether or not pest vermin control baiting should be done when grain was in store anyhow, or the risks of baiting being done in store. So the conversations that took place from the red tractor technical manager at the time, it wasn't Annie, that was crops at the time, but the technical manager there spent time talking to people that sit on crew, talking to the industry, talking to the grain merchants, etc., about the risk of baiting when grain was in store. And the standard that is now in place is the one that was, in essence, not the compromise, but it was one that was auditable and achievable. Again, goes back to we're listening. I can see from here that people are asking questions about if it's the right way. We had the question earlier about if someone was overrun with rats, what could they then do about it? We're listening. Now we've got the standard. We're looking at what's being raised, what's being seen, and that will help us develop the standard as we move forward. So that's not the answer you were looking for, but I said we're taking the information back. Yeah.
It's actually the perfect answer we're looking for, which is, in reality, no, you're never going to create a set of standards. I don't think I've ever read a set of standards that are so boilerplated that there's no room for misinterpretation. So with that, there's always going to be something that someone somewhere doesn't like. And so the fact that exists is not a surprise to me. The great thing to hear from you guys is this... not flexibility is the wrong word, but this embrace of get in contact, let us know, and it can be a discussion point for future iterations of this standards. And I think that is the most important thing by far. You're never going to get the nail on the head straight away, but that open dialogue and transparency, or just explaining why. And I think this is what people miss a lot of the time. why that decision has been made, because sometimes, you know, that we as I say before, we're this very small industry nestled within this much greater beast that we call agriculture, and they might have a much, you know, they can see over the hill, they can see onto the horizon, whereas we can only really see to the edge of the tree line. It helps so much to be able to be told why these decisions are being made sometimes, rather than feeling more like a mushroom, and that's, you know, being kept in the dark and covered in. Yes.
Yeah, I
So
think that is a big learning we've had. Transparency, what we're doing, why we do it, who, like I said, our boards, our technical advice committee, they're all named on the website, who they're representing, if you will, as well. Being transparent about who's involved in the decision-making process, and, you know, helping us understand maybe where we are missing that bit of technical knowledge that would help us. And I do think there's one other one in there, and like I said, either Hugh's had his Weetabix today and has really been asking lots of questions, or he's been gathering them up for everybody else. Why do we have vermin control standards for every standard, scope, when there's little difference between them? What we've tried to do is standardise across, so that, you know, as we mentioned earlier, with 46,000 members, some of them will be multiple scopes, so they might have beef and lamb and crops, and it's easier for them if they know what the vermin control standards are. But in some sectors, there's those slight nuances that have to be undertaken. So, you know, baiting in a grain store where the grain may be going for feed, for human consumption, etc. So we've had to have them differences in place. But we do hear where the outcome of the standards should be the same. The audit points should all align as well, so that everybody knows what's being asked of them. But I will also refer back to, you know, when we've got a number of standard boards and TACs all wanting their own little tweaks on things as well.
Do you think there is going to be a movement away from farmers doing their own pest control and more towards professionals then as this goes on, truthfully?
I think farmers themselves will make that decision. Can I employ a third party to undertake a job and do it properly, rather than me trying to stretch the amount of time I have to try and do lots of things? I think the industry itself will, because remember, as I said earlier, these are businesses that they're trying to run, and, you know, any business will take that time to look at it and say, right, what can I do? What am I good at doing? What do I need someone else who's good at doing something to do? Therefore, I get them to undertake that. So I think the industry itself is already starting to go down those lines.
So am I right in thinking, from an outsider looking in, as the standards get, I don't know the right way to say it, as the standards progress and get bigger and the requirements on the farm larger, then ultimately at some point they're going to have to, a lot of them will have to think about getting someone into it. As soon as they start getting non-compliance, it's going to be game over, isn't it?
Yeah. The changes to crew that are forthcoming, etc., that'll make some people think about, well, you know, what do I need to do to be compliant? It was interesting, someone put about people going off-label and against legal requirements. You know, some people don't know what they're doing is illegal, and until you get caught, a bit like speeding, you know, until you get caught, you don't realise that what you were doing. So I think there's that side of it. I also think it's not necessarily standards will get bigger or get harder. I think they can only go so far, can't they, in terms of standards? But the availability of personnel on farm to undertake the tasks on a farm will be the difference. So if you can find someone who'll do 15 hours a week on your farm, those people, you're not going to get them doing something. You want them to drive a tractor for 15 hours. You don't want to be doing pest control when they know that you guys can come in and do it for them, similar price, etc., or even less.
See, this is one of my good friends. I keep me bees at his farm as a farmer, and I think it's very easy as a pest controller to see what needs to be done and why you want to do it your way. But until you're with them and you see the downsides of it, like earlier on was saying about them helping out and things like that, But the reason why they go and chuck bait in between those hay bales, haylage bales, silage bales, whatever it is because if a rat gets in and bursts that bag, then it's a loss. It's a financial loss, isn't it? And it's not just the financial loss. It can cause problems if they feed it to cattle and da-da-da. And if they run short and they've got to feed it, then they get problems. And so, like we say, it's well-meaning, but the truth is they are like us. As you say, it's a business. They're trying to keep their business going. And they're in the only business in the world where price fixing is absolutely the norm. Do you know what I mean? Like it is. If someone turned around to the pest controllers and said, by the way, everyone's got to charge so much for a rat treatment, there'd be hell on, wouldn't there? There'd be hell on. It's against the law. But for some reason, with farmers, it's like, oh, by the way, this year, you're getting paid this much for your grain. You're getting paid this much. Someone comes in and tells you what you're going to sell your cattle for, don't they? Like, it is, they have a difficult... They have a very, very, very difficult task. And Richard just summed it up, didn't he? There's a lot of them now starting to do other things because it's difficult to make a living at it, isn't it? Unless you own your farm, especially tenant farmers and stuff. So I think this is why they're not adopting us sooner, because it is such, you know, it is a tight market for them at times now, isn't it? It's not the good old days of farming, is it, anymore?
Yeah. But food security, people interested in where their food's coming from. You know, the one thing behind Red Tractor is the Red Tractor logo. It is all British food in there. So the consumer message about the farmed with care side of it, if we can say that covers all elements, environment, animals, you know, nature, etc., is all covered by that farmed with care. And people that are interested in food security, hopefully that, you know, those farmers that decide they wish to be Red Tractor assured, want to continue to farm, will have a business going forward. It'll just be that the people that undertake the different elements of their business might be a third party doing it as a contracted service rather than doing it themselves. You know, that's gone along the ways yet.
If I buy beef or chicken or eggs or whatever it is, and it's got the Red Tractor on, I can be absolutely assured 1,000,000% that comes from the UK.
It has to carry the Red Tractor logo. It has to be born, reared, slaughtered, produced, etc. in this country. So the Red Tractor field to fork. I do have a few. Let me just find my figures here. We have 850 licensed sites that produce £16 billion worth of Red Tractor food each year. So the Red Tractor logo sits on £16 billion worth of food each year. As I've said, to carry the Red Tractor logo, it has to have been born, hatched, reared, slaughtered and processed in the UK. Fruit and veg is the same. It must be grown, processed and packed in the UK. So I know before someone jumps on the carrots from Chernobyl or whichever, in the last 12 months, we've had 4 mislabeling incidents where the Red Tractor logos appeared on a social media post with a product that hasn't been from the UK. The Chernobyl one was a Photoshop. Of those 4, all of them we've been able to determine what's happened within a 2-hour period of that first appearing on social media. And we've been able to take products ourselves. And by it having the Red Tractor logo on, they are answerable to someone. If they just put a Union Jack on it, they're not answerable to anybody. By them using our logo, they have responsibilities to ourselves. We go out doing traceability challenges at these packing sites, etc. So we are, you know, yes, 1,000,000%. You know that it would be, and if those small anomalies that tend to be human error, someone hasn't changed the coding on the machine that's doing the packing or whatever, you know, they will be investigated. As was mentioned earlier, root cause analysis is undertaken. Additional assessments are done further down the line to make sure that, you know, the new processes that are being put in place are followed, etc. So yes, you can be, yeah.
Wouldn't be a podcast without talking about bees, Al. I've just got to say quickly, have you ever thought about doing it for honey? Because obviously that's like the big one, isn't it? That.
Well, you mean more accountability and traceability, Sean?
No, yeah, because like 99% of the honey in supermarkets is fake honey because it doesn't come from the UK, isn't it? And you get this package blend of or whatever it is. Like if you could put that red tractor mark on honey, I'm sure the large honey producers would love it because they're on the
I will
knees.
take that. I'll take that one away to my colleagues. But yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So we're just coming up to an hour 20 now, and do we have time for one more question? Can we steal you for just one more question, or go on then? Go on, Sean. Do you want to take the last question of the evening?
No, I want you to do for well, yeah. So, have you enjoyed your time on the podcast?
Oh no, not these ones, not these ones. I meant like genuinely one more.
Oh no, you have the last one because I've had loads tonight, Al. So go on, you do that, and then I'll do them ones. I'm like the most unprepared person. Like my brain works different. So you have the last one, and we'll go from there.
I mean, Christopher Harkins has made an interesting point, which is, how do our standards compare to those from the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, especially with? Oh, you've got something written down.
I have. My colleagues will be so impressed. So, how do we compare to the rest of the world? We are one of the best in the world, and that has been confirmed by Codex, who look at such things, and WTO used us as an exemplar recently for when COVID hit in 2020. Obviously, a big part of our role is going down farm drives and looking at farms. COVID hit, everybody had to stay at home. How are we going to be able to do this? How are we going to be able to do the whole 2 meter distancing? And what we were able to do was bring in remote assessments so that we could confirm that standards were still being met. We were using various different digital platforms to do calls with people. They'd walk us around the farm, etc. So we've got that Codex. Lots of inward trade missions are looking at Red Tractor in terms of that. Replicating us in their own countries, and each year we'll probably have 8 to 10 of those trade missions that will come in and want to talk to us about how we do it, what we do, because they've heard of Red Tractor as being a part of the assurance world and being an exemplar in the world of standards. So yeah, we how do we compare? We're a voluntary scheme, but for the size of organisation, we probably hit above our weight. As I said, with that, however many £1 billion worth of products got our logo on it. So yeah, we're well received across the world.
And we will reiterate a point that we made just off air, but to make it now. I was only saying off air how it's lovely that Red Tractor has become more visible over the last couple of years. It used to be that you went back a little while back, it was very difficult to get hold of anyone from Red Tractor. It's very hard to get a statement or someone to come out. And you were saying that the team of people that run Red Tractor that do all of this hard work, there's not a lot of you, is there? Can you say on air just how many people there is crewing that particular ship?
So Red Tractor, Assured Food Standards, the actual organisation that's the compliance, the technical managers, our marketing team that put the adverts out, our finance team that keep us all right, IT, data team. There's 31 of us, I believe. Might be 32 headcount if you look at, but yeah. So we're with that. We work with our 4 certification bodies who will have their teams do the certification. But the core Red Tractor employed staff is 31 at Red Tractor Towers, wherever Red Tractor Towers may be now that we all work from home.
Red Tractor Towers, which looks suspiciously like a grain silo stacked up at the edge of a field somewhere.
Yeah.
No, that's a tremendous amount of work, and as you say, an exemplar for the world to look to, off the shoulders of 31 people is fairly incredible work. So we do it. Thank you a lot for that, and especially for taking the time out of a Friday night to come and speak to us. So with that, I think we will now go to our final 3 questions, our famous 3 questions.
Sorry.
Every time.
Did you say that you had 95% of beef producers on Red Tractor?
Dairy.
That therefore would suggest to me that if you do not see that on dairy, the chances are it's not from the UK, isn't it? Dairy
farms covered by Red Tractor doesn't necessarily mean that all product will carry the Red Tractor logo. It'll have it as a buying spec in the background. There is one supermarket that doesn't put Red Tractor on any of their own brand product, but they have it as a buying spec.
Right.
So the logo. So yeah, I don't want you to stop going shopping in some supermarkets because you're not seeing the Red Tractor. The British supermarkets, fresh milk will be Red Tractor assured with the fresh milk, definitely. In this country.
Will it?
Excellent.
Interesting.
Well, there we go.
Right.
So I'll put these up then. So you first, John.
Yeah, have you enjoyed your time on our little podcast?
Yeah, it's been really good. I've really enjoyed talking to beauties and beasties. Everybody at work was saying, "What are you doing on Friday night, Kate?" Some of them have gone to an award ceremony in Cumbria tonight. I said, "Oh, I'm booked. I'm off to the Beauties and Beasties podcast."
Well, there we go. And absolutely, we won't put you on the spot and ask you which one you think is the beauty and which one you think is the beastie. You'll grin there. You know exactly which one, don't you, Sean?
Last week, was it, Al? I shaved my head and my face because of you last week. I came on and Al went, Sean said, you look really tired. And I was like, oh, God, I'm going to have to go home and do something about this. Oops.
Oh, I'm so sorry I shamed you into shaving your beard. It was a magnificent beard, though. It was getting something, wasn't it?
Tell you what, yeah.
My question is give us a shameless plug. So if you would like the pest management community this is primarily for the pest management community. If you'd like all the pest managers in the UK, of which we speak to, actually this podcast reaches about 5-6% of them. So yeah, a fair number. If you'd like them to all do one thing tomorrow, buy one thing or buy into an idea, let's say, what would you like that to be? What would you like them to do? What would your shameless plug be?
Well, my shameless plug, I've got two. One is do what Sean's already done because he wasn't listening to me and he was busy looking at the standards on the website. Just go and have a look at them, see what we are actually assessing against. The second one is we know out there are farms that sometimes we think they've let standards slip. How can this be assured? Or I've got concerns about this farm. Be aware of the fact that you can report those farms to Red Tractor anonymously. We have something on our website called the Tellers Line. And if you have got farms of concern where you're doing your best, or they're asking you to provide something because we've got an assessment coming up, but there's other concerns, use that. Do not be afraid to come to us if there's forms of concern. Now, I'm guessing they won't be your clients, etc., but they might be forms that you've heard about when you've been to clients, etc. If they're a Red Tractor member, we'd like to know. Then we can bring the standards up across the board with everybody. So that's my shameless plug. Use our website.
Use the website, absolutely. Of which we will try and put some. We'll try and make a link to the website in the comments in just a bit. Last question though, Sean.
Yeah. Who would you like to see on here?
Ooh. Who would like to see on here? Bed bugs. They're always an interesting question. Thing is the bed bugs. I love coming to your conferences to talk bed bugs.
We've had a couple of we've had Richard Naylor from Cymex Stores and the Bedbug Foundation on a couple of times now, and we've had some bedbug dogs. But they're always a fascinating subject. It's probably one of the biggest separators between Sean and myself is the world of insects. Sean is not a big fan. I think they're fascinating. I am a big bug nerd at the end of the day. I'm also a little bug nerd. I love bugs of all sizes.
To be fair, Al, you are rubbing off on me though, because I'm starting to enjoy them a little bit more. We've invested in some dehumidifiers and some fans and some heaters because we're starting to think holistically. Do you like that word? About it, not just thingy. We are getting into them a bit more, starting to identify a few insects that I wouldn't have identified previously. So we're getting there slowly but surely.
The other bit of your industry that fascinates me is those that are using birds of prey. Mm-hmm. Now, we have an office in London. I was walking through wherever they filmed the Harry Potter Diagon Alley bit the other day, and someone very early in the morning, and someone was doing the fly through with a bird to avoid the fish, and I find that fascinating.
Oh yes,
I wish I had asked Dale, because when I walked up the stairs, Dale's got a Harris Hawk, the lad who works for me, and he was outside. I could have gone to bring it in. Yeah.
So yeah, that bit of work fascinates me. So yeah, thank you very much.
It's fine. Thanks, Niall. Well, with that, we are approaching the 1:30 mark. So thank you ever so much for this evening. Loads of questions, and I have to say you have answered them all really sort of like really well. I don't think there's been a question so far that we haven't got an honest answer out of, which is fantastic. And yeah, everyone who's listening, please, my take home, my shameless plug, get involved, please. There's no point sitting on the sidelines complaining that the standards are not what you want to see and everything's all terrible and it's doom and gloom. You've heard it here. If you want to get involved, if you want to make a difference, if you want to be part of the solution as opposed to complaining about the problem, get involved. Go to the website, as we've said before, and have your say. Bring these things up and get involved. But with that, from me,
hang on a second. Are you going to be a pest tech? Are you going to be a pest tech, Kate? You've muted yourself. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I am. I'm muting myself because I've got Betty the corgi.
All right, yeah. Going to be a pest tech. So anyone in pest tech, stop on the stand, say hello, have a chat with Kate and Annie. Is it?
Annie's my colleague. Either Annie or Debbie.
Yeah. Say hello, have a chat.
Yes, mention Beauties and Beasties as well. We'll see how many people we can get to say that.
Love it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much. And for everyone that's listening, we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, all.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.